Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Before we call the meeting to order, I just want to share some somber news. It's with sadness that I have to share that Neil Cathcart, a former longstanding member of Township Council, has passed away as of last week. Neil served more than 18 years on Township Council as both a councillor and as the reeve of the municipality. And he also served as the warden of Peterborough Council in 2025, Peterborough County Council, rather. So the flags of the municipal buildings will be at half-mast in recognition of Neil's many years of service. And I want to just express council's condolences to both Neil's family and all of his many friends in the township. So sorry to share that news as we start today. With that, I will call the regular council meeting of Monday, November 17th, 2025 to order at 1:01 p.m. We'll begin the meeting with the land acknowledgement. We respectfully acknowledge that the township of Cabmonaghan is located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory in the traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabe. We offer our gratitude to First Nations for their care for and teachings about these lands. May we honor these teachings. Look to council for approval of the agenda as presented, moved by Councillor Burns, second by Deputy Mayor Huntley. All in favor? That is approved. Any disclosures of pecuniary interest today? Seeing none, there is no closed session, so we'll move right into the public meeting, which is 6.1. So I need a resolution to go into the public meeting open in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. And we'll go to Matt Wilkinson with regards to Report Planning 2025-41 610 Sireline Zoning Bylaw.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to members of council and the public. Before you today is Planning Report number 2025-41. The report presents two recommendations. One, that council receive and consider all comments related to zoning bylaw amendment application ZBA-07-25, and that the draft zoning bylaw amendment be presented to council at a future date for future consideration. On May 15th, 2025, County of Peterborough Land Division granted Kelly and Dan Jones of 610 Sireline a conditional approval for severance application number B03-25. This proposed zoning amendment being discussed today is to fulfill one of those conditions. The severed lot is approximately 0.8 hectares or 2 acres in size, approximately 77 meters or 253 feet lot frontage on Sireline. The severed lot is currently developed with a single detached dwelling on private services. The retained parcel is approximately 22.1 hectares or 54.6 acres in size, with approximately 438 meters or 1,437 feet of lot frontage on Sireline. The retained parcel is currently vacant except for an outbuilding on the east side of the property. The lot is proposed to be developed with a single detached dwelling on private services. The owners of 610 Sireline made application to the township to rezone the severed parcel from the agricultural zone to the rural residential zone and rezone the retained parcel from the agricultural zone to the agricultural exception 23 zone. This would recognize the deficiency in lot area. An environmental impact study was submitted in support of the application. Township planning staff did not support the severance application because it did not conform to provincial planning statement policies, the county official plan, or the township official plan. The township official plan states that agricultural lands are to be preserved and residential severances are prohibited in the agricultural designation. Township Staff Report 2025-11 regarding the severance was provided as attachment number 4 to this report. 610 Sireline is predominantly designated agricultural, as shown on Schedule A in the Township Official Plan. The agricultural area designation is made up in the countryside area and made up of the agricultural and rural transition. The province defines a prime agricultural area as an area where prime agricultural lands predominate, including agricultural lands and associated rural areas with soil classes 4 through 7, and additional areas with local concentration of farms, which exhibit characteristics of ongoing agricultural uses. Soil classes 4 through 7 are predominantly designated rural in the Township Official Plan, and residential severances are also not permitted in the rural designation. Meaning that prime agricultural areas are not just about soil type and land size. Rather, agricultural areas are recognized because they're part of a contiguous agricultural area. And interrupting that contiguous agricultural area with non-agricultural uses, including residential uses, is not in keeping with the guiding principles. The Township Official Plan states that the objective of both the agricultural and rural areas to protect lands suitable for agricultural production from scattered development and land uses which are unrelated to agriculture. Notice of the proposed amendment and public meeting was circulated by first-class prepaid mail to all assessed persons within 120 meters or 400 feet of the subject lands to all required ministries, agencies, and township department directors. Notice of the public meeting was posted on the township website. A notice sign was posted at the front of the property. The notice complies with the requirements of the Planning Act. No comments were received prior to the drafting of the report. However, Mrs. Jones delivered 2 letters from neighboring properties to the east and west in support of the application. The first letter compliments the Joneses on being excellent stewards of the land by planting native grasses and welcoming animals to graze and seek shelter on their property. The second letter simply states they have no concerns with the proposal to build a house on the property. I'd like to thank the neighbors for participating in the planning process. Township Building Department has no objection, and the Township Public Works Department noted that an entrance permit will be required to facilitate the new dwelling. Canada Post and Enbridge Gas have no objection to the application. Autonomy Conservation provided comment that the application is consistent with Chapter 5 of the Provincial Policy Statement referencing natural heritage. Permits from their agency may be required prior to any site alteration or construction. The property is in an area where source water protection policies do not apply. The proposed development is not subject to the risk management official, and a restricted land use notice is not required. Since the drafting of the report, comments of the Canadian Pacific Railway were received. The comment states that the CPKC is not in favor of residential uses that are not compatible with rail operations, as the safety and welfare of residents can be adversely affected by rail operations. CPKC freight trains operate 24/7, and the schedule and volumes are subject to change. CPKC continues to recommend that all proposed developments, whether residential, commercial, or industrial, follow the 2013 proximity guidelines, and it's incumbent on the owners to incorporate these safety measures to a degree that satisfies the requirements of the agencies issuing building and development permits. This comment was also provided by CPKC at the time of the severance application. County Land Division included this comment in the decision page in keeping with their standard practice. However, conditions cannot be made on future sales and purchases, as this is not a condition to be cleared. As a proposed rezoning application is required to clear a condition for the proposed residential severance, the severance will also remove agricultural lands from the greater agricultural area for a non-agricultural use. Therefore, township planning staff maintain that the application does not conform to the objectives of the township official plan, and we would like council to have the opportunity to hear and consider all comments made at today's meeting, and staff will bring this back at a future date. Thank you.
Thank you for that report, Matt. So we now open questions for members of council with regards to Matt and the report, and then we'll open for members of the public to speak to the application. Any questions with regards to the report? Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair to Matt, I don't know what the dating is on the maps that are being looked at for this situation to say they are rural or prime agricultural. I am no personal fan of carving up farms, but this particular area is not what you would call prime farm if you knew anything about farming. And when I look next door to what we're doing out behind this room we're in right now today on very good farmland, or what we've done up on the Sire line just down the road from these people with industrial land at Mel Morton's old property on Sire line, I really don't know, because over my history, I see a lot of this mapping is very inaccurate or generalized. And I get that because back in the day, the technology wasn't what it was. And the money for funding that kind of research was not what it was. But I've been talking to people at agricultural events for years, and the promising from the Ontario government to update and get more accurate mapping or determination of what is valuable and what is not valuable doesn't seem to be coming to fruition very quickly. So I'm just curious what this dating on the mapping that you're actually looking at and how many times it's actually been physically looked at to say, is it even relevant? Is it even accurate?
Yeah.
Through you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne and members of council. So the mapping associated with the current official plan was generated by, we used supporting documentation from the ministry and the county back when we started the new official plan back in about 2009. In the plan previous to the current official plan, the property was designated rural. And that plan was done after the amalgamation of Cavan, Millbrook, and North Monaghan. And so I believe that plan was probably dated 2002. So There is no, just for information, there was, to the best of my knowledge, a project ongoing with the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Rural Affairs, or whatever they call themselves today, to look at mapping in Peterborough County. And we have been waiting for that mapping for some time. And I can't give you a promise today of when we might receive that mapping, but we are hoping it will be available to implement in our new official plan.
Follow-up, Councilor Byrne?
Yeah, through the chair to Marcellus, even those dates you just mentioned were looked at a second or a third or a fourth time, whether it be 2002 or whenever. It's my impression, if I got it right, that a lot of those times they used existing mapping from previous 20 or 30 years earlier to formulate the new guidelines and everything. That the mapping was never actually redone, just restamped with a new date, which again is notoriously inaccurate in a lot of cases that I've run across. So I'm just wondering if there's anything that's really current, if anybody's actually taken the time to look at this particular piece of property.
I think, so the only issue, Councilor Byrne, is that there's not a local opportunity to exempt ourselves from the mapping that the ministry gives us. So there's no lower autonomy to make those sorts of decisions or corrections or adjustments. That's, the ministry is the rule book when it comes to it. So we've asked even at the county to use alternative mapping from an agricultural standpoint, have been told no. So it's really outside our autonomy to make any sort of localized on the ground assessments that are contradictory to the mapping that the ministry gives us at this time. So it's not that, even if you were to do those sorts of explorations, it's not gonna, the mapping won't be updated or integrated with any local finding. It's like, it's kind of just how it goes with levels of bureaucracy and control. But Ms. Ellis, would you like to speak to a bit more clarity on that?
Thank you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Byrne and members of council. Just for your information, Councillor Byrne, you are correct that much of the mapping is based on agricultural capability mapping that has been in place as long as I have been a professional planner. So it's old. I don't know that the classification of land in terms of agricultural versus rural versus something else, so is not strictly based on the soil capability. That is one piece of the puzzle, but we look at land uses in the area. We look at, is it a settlement area? Is it close to road infrastructure in terms of potential for other uses? Are there natural resources in terms of gravel and things that might make the property suitable for a pit or a quarry? So lots of things go into the determination of whether it's prime agricultural, rural, or something else. When we did the official plan that's currently in place, the council of the day made the decision that notwithstanding, if we designated something rural, and there are lands in Cavan Monaghan designated rural, there is still no severance potential because of the potential for incompatible land uses. So the agricultural capability is one piece of the puzzle that we look at in terms of determining what the appropriate land use designation is and what policies should be applied to that designation.
And this process is how we do get some of the autonomous control to listen, to review staff's, interpretations and opinions regarding legislation, and then obviously the local lens as well. So I want to make sure we get that opportunity to hear from the local residents. And were those letters, like they mentioned letters of support? Did I miss those in the package with regards to sorry, with staff, with regards to the application? I just, if they were, I might have missed it, or maybe I read them as a part of the report instead, but I just want to make sure council gets them if that was an omission.
Through you, Mayor, to you. They were dropped off November 13th. So they were after the drafting.
So council can we digitize those and email them to council just for review and consideration? Because we're going to be coming back with the zoning bylaw amendment. So we'll have time to review them in light of that, which was the intention, I think. Okay, thanks, Matt. Deputy Mayor Hunley.
It's through you, Chair, more of a comment than a question, really. And I do recall this coming through at County Council, and with the land division committee did come back and say, they applied common sense over the Planning Act on this one, and it was applauded to them for making that decision, and it was accepted by Peterborough County as being, or the county council as being acceptable. And this is just one more step that these guys are going through to get to the end line here. So thanks for coming out today and thanks for the report, Matt.
Thanks, Deputy Mayor. Oh, sorry, Councillor Richardson, I forgot about you, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Byrne.
You, Mr. Mayor, I have comment on what Councillor Burke just said about the land and that, and I can't see any reason why they couldn't build up there because no in that area, there is adequate water in that up there to support another building anyway. And I can't see why we can't have another building on that lot.
Councillor Byrne, do you have a question? Yep.
Through the chair, yeah, so I'm just wondering, because I'm sure if we went back to the same dating of this mapping, whenever it was done, the prime farmland that's around the city of Millbrook or county or village of Millbrook, whatever they want to call it today, it was all prime agricultural and it was actually viable, workable land. And that's where I'm having the trouble finding the logic behind stating that this is the reason we can't do it, but we've already proven that we can in certain situations. So that my question is, how do you rationalize that when you're telling some individual?
It's the province dictates that you need to identify growth for a specific timeline in your OP. And you need to, their parts of the policies in the Planning Act suggest that you need to do them in settlement areas. You need to establish settlement areas and expand those boundaries to accommodate the majority of your growth. So our OP has to be consistent with the Planning Act in order for it to do it. So that's why where your settlement area is where you need to expand it in order to accommodate growth. That's the provincial legislation. That's what it dictates. So whether they're prime ag or not, your settlement area dictates where you're supposed to dedicate. Is it 90% of your growth or something? There's a percentage threshold. Anyways, neither here nor there, but that's how you get these settlement areas that are allocated for growth, and you need to identify for, I believe we're up to 2051 now with the future OP. So those areas are where the province has dictated that you allocate the growth, and so that's where it has to go. You don't have the opportunity to create until actually that might have been one of the amendments. Up until I would say at the start of this term of council, municipalities also did not have the autonomy to establish new settlement areas. You were restricted to what ones existed in previous legislation. And as Millbrook by its name was where the mill was beside the brook, that was based on, hundreds of year old economies of scale when it comes to a mill sort of thing. So it's not really based on where the land is to grow. It's based on where the growth was occurring hundreds and hundreds of years ago. So hopefully that gives a little clarity. Councilor Brandfall.
Through the chair, to that point, it was a suggestion, though. It's not this. Well, that's the way you worded it. I'm sorry.
With regards to the growth, it's a requirement. Like you need to identify your settlement area growth areas. So the question, sorry.
Through the chair, so that you mentioned that it was a suggestion to keep growth in settlement areas.
Other questions? If not, we'll get the public. Oh, Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor Graham, to Councillor Burnham and members of council. So I'm not going to give you a lesson on planning, but you have to remember that when we, as professional planners, look at the legislation, we look at the provincial planning statement, the county OP, our growth management strategy, our own official plan. We read them in their entirety. And the mayor is correct that under the Planning Act and the provincial planning statement, it's a requirement for the township to designate land for a minimum of 20 years for growth, to accommodate that growth. And with the hierarchy of services, we need to look at where we have piped municipal water and sewer services. That is the first priority for growth. So that is why you see the land around Millbrook as being used for settlement and residential and commercial institutional purposes. That's the reason behind that. It's those decisions are taken in addition to the consideration of prime agricultural land, the natural heritage system, the road transportation network. All of those things go into making those decisions. And we will get into that next year when we do our new official plan.
Thank you, Ms. Ellis. And also, and just the extension of the other property in question, there was a recent update requesting by the province that areas around the corridor of the 115 and major arteries were identified for employment. So when that suggestion was, that was what brought forward the opportunity for Sireline. That corridor was specifically designated by the province to try to identify parcels for employment opportunities because it's such a main corridor for those purposes. Anyways. Other questions with regards to the report? If not, I want to let the individual speak to the application. Okay, so with that, we now open the 6.4 of the agenda to allow members of the public wishing to speak to the application to come forward to the microphone. So whoever would like to, no rush at all, by all means. So I think the clerk may have given you the rundown, but I'll give you the quick one. So as soon as I hit my red light off, you can hit that button and yours comes on. So just give us your name, first and last name and the address in the township, and then the floor is yours.
Hello, my name is Kelly Jones. This is my husband, Dan. Good morning or good afternoon, council. Just wanted to, I did send a pamphlet to you guys all and just wanted to speak on a few things that we have in there. There is some pictures. If you could take a look at those, I'd appreciate that. We have some safety concerns and picture one shows the traffic ascending the hill. As depicted, there is insufficient space for oncoming traffic to pass safely. And combined with limited visibility, it poses a significant hazard. Pictures 2 and 3 show the view from the top of the hill at the point which our equipment becomes visible to oncoming traffic. These images demonstrated that the drivers have minimal time to react. We have had calls go out to the OPP, some near missiles and over the years verbal altercations with people while doing that, because we aren't able to take our equipment up the back portion of our property because it is very sandy and has eroded. So that's one of the reasons we're hoping to have the rezoning approved so that we would be able to sever and build on the retained portion of the property and store what equipment we need up there as well. Next would be just the visual evidence we wanted to show. I know you can't really come site to site to look at these things. So there are pictures showing the topography and soil conditions of our property. And picture 4, it shows the upper portion of our property. Towards the top of it, there's a tree line that is between ours and the neighboring property. And then it shows the general area of where we would like to build, kind of near the front up there. Picture 5 captures the same area just from a different angle where you can see kind of up in the corner. You might not be able to see it actually. It's the neighbor's house that is currently up there that is between both of our properties, upper and lower. On picture 6, it looks back towards the lower portion of our property behind the current home. You can see the sandiness of the soil in that, how it's kind of rough and bumpy and picture 7 shows the steep incline and the sandy conditions. In that one location, there's a few of them, but we literally have like pits of sand throughout our property. And then pictures 8, 9, and 10, I've added just to show some of the environmental features. We did a couple preliminary severance applications. This one here is an MDS showing from 2021 that showed that they didn't really have any concerns at that time with the MDS standpoint. The one barn that is still showing up on the mapping for that is no longer there. And there's no cattle there and the barn is totally gone. And it has been for a number of years. Number 9, it just highlights on the map showing the environmental features, including some of the treated areas. And it shows that the proposed build site, I haven't mapped it out here, but I spoke with Orca and it is the 30 meters away from that stream where we're proposing to build. It would be, if you're looking at it, to the right or to the left of that picture. And then picture 11 shows the lower part of our property where our current home is, and that would be in blue where we would hope to get to be able to get that severed there. So we would maintain just a couple little other notes. With regards to the CP rail, the railroad, we would not need to access another We would not have to put anything else on there because own the property and behind that railroad, and we already maintain a level crossing that would still be on our property. Yeah, I don't, is there anything you wanna?
One thing for us to add is the current agricultural use of the property is, we do maple syrup on a property that, in the image behind you, it's beside the field behind our property. So that's the only agricultural use currently on that property, and by severing that piece, it doesn't affect or change that in any
We
way.
will still be
We would still be
continuing
doing the
that.
exact same amount that we do now. The other thing, added, even that image that's on the screen right now, like when they talk about the general area being agriculture, if they were to zoom that map out, you'd see there's a very large commercial farm across the road from our property. So the bottom of that map, there's one further up the road and one further down the road. But the property in front of our property, which is the closest piece of imagery to it, and including 564, our neighbors, there's no agricultural uses because the land's not suitable. So this does not capture the elevation, which is the biggest problem we have. It's not that you can mow those trees down and have a flat field. You're in a ravine that no equipment's gonna operate on. We also have made many efforts over time. There was cattle on the farm when it was first purchased. We worked with local county agents to put in, to plant other grass, like to build biomaterial to try and replace lost soil. There's a bunch of aggregate removed for construction of the highway as a sand pit, which created the lower part, the right-hand side of that picture. And no topsoil was obviously replaced back then. It wasn't a requirement or however they did things. So we've planted switchgrass, we've tilled it in, we've added fertilizer, we've done soil testing to try and get that back to a farm, and basically just spent thousands of dollars with absolutely no output results. So finally got a conclusion from both the agencies we worked with, Sunderland Co-op, and we've worked with local Cavan Agriculture, that they just can't, we just don't have a path forward beyond trucking in thousands of loads of topsoil and creating a layer of topsoil, which is not feasible for any, let alone a farm that's not a farm. So, you know, there was a lot of speak to like how the areas are broad and the mapping is broad, and, you know, I understand if we stood before you and we owned the property across the road and say we want to build a house there where it grew corn or beans last year, it's a pretty tough argument, but there seems to be no way to get a specific look at this piece of property. And once you see it, as the people that have, and that's why we brought our pictures, because it just shows that though it's in an area where agriculture is, it's not an agricultural, like crop use property. Other uses, for sure, we do maple syrup on it right now, not even on the property we're discussing, but on a property they base, but we use that property for that. So, we just mostly wanted to try and get some of that specific imagery and some of that, what you're actually talking about, because I think it does make it a little difference. And again, it's one lot we're looking for. We're not attempting to change the dynamics of the neighborhood. That's why we spoke with our neighbors so they can all understand. You know, the lot beside it, there's 2 severances out of it, the lot across and down the road, new house is constructed. So despite it being an agricultural area, it is becoming more residential year on year. There's been 13 houses there since I bought. So I don't think adding one more house changes drastically what we're doing out there. And I think that has to be a bit relevant as well. There's also is a road allowance. We haven't got to any point about having a driveway or anything like that, but I have a driveway with a culvert on that upper field already. So it was just mentioned, and this isn't the time or place, I don't think, for the specifics of it, but I don't think we need a different access permit. We just use the access permit we have now. And it comes off the road, it's got a county maintained culvert. So if that was an issue, which I don't really think it's relevant, but there is a driveway there, it must not be on our record. Do you have anything else? So you get.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, I'm not sure if Orca was mentioned, but I did have a report from Orca. And it said it was determined that the subject area is not located with any vulnerable area that is subject to SPP policies. They didn't seem to have any concerns when I spoke with them. They just mentioned that we would have to have a 30-meter hard from that. And then I do also have the letters from my neighbors if you wanted to take a look today at all. Okay.
REIS did find some species at risk and some habitat stuff. And although I think that's generally viewed as something negative for people who are interested in severing, we've aside from trying to make it an agriculture property over the years, we've added a lot of natural features. We've increased the size. Like if you look back on previous mapping to when I purchased it, those ravines are much larger now, those growth areas. So we do provide some opportunity for that and have no interest in changing that, although I understand that can't be qualified. But I mean, we've done that over time, and it was a positive thing to see that we have some stuff that is other things that are benefiting from the lack of farming it. And the EIS, when he was there, even spoke, like if it's cut in for hayland, those things are not there. There's some birds that nest on the ground. So, you know, we were glad they're not in the area we want to build. I understand those ramifications, but it's actually kind of interesting. We kind of took a positive because that's what the area has become. We have walking trails, we have local people walking and they're seeing stuff. So what the property has become, because we couldn't use it for its intent. It was bought to farm, it was bought to raise cows. And that's why I purchased it then. We couldn't get there from here, and we've tried it, we've exhausted it, and now we've moved it on to something else. It might not fit its intended or its prescribed mapping use, but it's become a valuable little place on its own. So that's really all. You don't have to get on. I don't have anything. Do you have anything else?
The only thing I was gonna mention is just in the EIS report, they didn't see anything concerning at all. And he also mentions like the topography and such as well.
All right, well, thank you. So just for the clerk's purposes, just confirming the 610 is the address in question, that's just for record keeping. We just want to hear the audio bulk come from, yeah, it's yeah. Yeah. No.
I think it's all work.
It's just for administrative purposes. So we just need it for auto. There you go. Perfect. Excellent. Thank you so much. Initial comments, just, I want to thank you for the reaching out to neighbors is great. I mean, it's the right thing to do. You've already done some of the planning work, it sounds like, because obviously those are all requirements regardless of other nuances. There was a prescriptive list from the county report of the things that you need to accommodate as well in addition. And like, we've had a lot of the conversation about, like, I think a lot of people believe that when, there has to be opportunities for council to have nuance, and the planners have to live within the legislative framework that they do, but I don't take it personally. It's not a personal thing. It's just the reality of the circumstance. And we've had a long conversations about mapping and the issues with mapping and all of those nuances on a local level. But I think the photos that you provided are great as well, because, I grew up just across Tapley Quarter Line on Sire Line, so I'm very familiar with the area. I haven't liked that road my entire childhood. So I know that topography a bit, but it's great to see the visuals. It's always very helpful. So I commend you guys for the efforts that you've done. And I think we'll move forward with hearing that. Are there questions for either Dan or Kelly at this time? Councillor Nacho.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Not as much a question, but just to kind of reiterate what the mayor had said was, I definitely commend you on the diligence that you've put into doing the report that you provided for us. You guys, this is a kind of masterclass of what further people should maybe look at as to how this should be done. Obviously, each one of these things is done on a case-by-case basis if it doesn't necessarily follow the guidelines of what the ministry's hoping that it would be the case. So that being the case, just as well as the mayor said, you connected with your neighbors and you're trying to be as respectful to the people around you, and you're taking into consideration wildlife and the effects of that. So I was very impressed with the way you guys have conducted yourself. So thanks for coming today.
Okay. I don't believe anyone else is here to speak to the application. So consideration of the report then today is all we're doing is receiving the comments that we've received today, and that the zoning, the draft zoning bylaw amendment will be presented at a future date for council consideration then. I'm going to move in a seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Natchoff. All in favor? That is approved. Thank you again for attending. I need a resolution now from council to close the public meeting. Moved by Councillor Burns, seconded by Councillor Edgerton. All in favor? That is approved. Thanks again, Dana Kelly. All right, next on the agenda, we have a delegation, not a public meeting, excuse me, with regards to the Synergy Power Systems, Inc. for municipal support confirmation for Synergy Power Systems for IESOs LT2 RFP. Is it Matt or Ryan speaking today? Okay, Matt, so same sort of drill. When I'm lit up, you can't speak, but as soon as I go off, just tap that button and you're good to go.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. I'm here with Ryan, my partner, speaking about a project to build on the work that Ryan and other partners have been doing on Fallis Line to repower an existing renewable energy facility. And so this is part of the expansion of that. And it dovetails with some of the broader power challenges in the province. So we can go to the next slide. The first couple slides are some context. CEM is a locally owned engineering project delivery firm. We are based in Niagara. We have a Burlington office and a Calgary office, and we've been doing projects like this for about 25 years across Canada. Small distributed biogas or natural gas projects has been our bread and butter. So we're kind of the lead developer in partnership with Ryan and his team who own the existing operation. Next slide, please. The next 3 slides are about the independent electricity system operator. They kind of have 2 jobs. This is my description, not theirs. Their first job is to keep the lights on today. So they operate the grid in a macro sense. There's a facility somewhere in the GTA where they literally map out the whole system and they make sure that we have power when we need it, like today. That's job number 1. Job number 2 is that they protect the supply of power 20, 30 years from now. And so they look at the grid that we have. You can see the pie chart there. The data is a little bit old, but they are looking at all of the hydroelectric and nuclear and wind and solar assets that we have and natural gas plants, and making sure that as those get retired, as the load grows in Ontario, that we have enough power. So they're always kind of focusing on today and on the future. Next slide. On the topic of the future, this is a graph that they published last fall, winter. They're about to publish a new version of this slide. Basically, what it shows is how our energy demand, this is electricity demand in Ontario, will grow in the coming years. They have a forecast from 24, and then the green line is 25. They forecast 75% growth in electrical load in this province. That's a variety of factors. It's electric vehicles, it's electrification of a lot of our heating, it's industrial growth, it's data centers, it's the mills in Sudbury and Sault Ste. Marie electrifying their operation. It's a variety of things, but they're looking out into the future and they're seeing a significant need for power. And so because their job is to keep the lights on 30 years from now, they are planning now to bring on new power. Next slide. When you bring on new power in Ontario or in any jurisdiction, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time. And so that's why they're planning now. And they're planning under what's called a LT2. It's a request for proposal. So it's a competitive process. LT stands for long-term. So they're buying assets that will have a 20-year long-term contract with the province. And they will have windows. So every year they're going to buy energy. So that will largely be wind and solar, and capacity, which means projects that can kind of respond to the short-term needs of the system. And so right now we are in the window 1 procurement, which closes in December 18th. And so we are working on a project that will go into the capacity stream of this LT2 window 1. So they're trying to buy 600 megawatts. And that will be a variety of different types of projects as it was in previous iterations of the program. And so we can go to the next slide. One of the key elements of submitting a bid into the RFP, and one of the reasons, aside from bringing general awareness, one of the reasons we're here today is that part of the program requires a municipal resolution to be submitted as part of your bid. And so that's basically indicating that the municipality in general is supportive of the project. It is not in any means a bypass of planning or building permit. That will come later if a project is successful. It basically says that the municipalities looked at it and they are generally supportive. So there's a prescribed form. We've submitted it to staff. They're looking at it as part of their report writing. But basically our request is to get a form like this from council in support of the project. So those are some general context matters. I'll go into the project a little bit more. You can go to the next slide. The next slide is just administrative. So the proponent, the entity that is supplying is Synergy Power Systems, Inc. The project is called Synergy Organics. We are looking for 1 megawatt of capacity. So there's existing generation capacity there today, and we're looking to expand it, and we're going to put in reciprocating engine technology. You can go to the next slide. So the site is on Fallis Line. I think the street address is 180. So 180 Fallis Line. It's an existing biogas operation, and we're going to expand it. And I'll show you a more of a overview of the site in, I think, 2 slides. We can go to the next slide. The project itself will consist of 2 reciprocating gas engines. So think of like a large truck engine. They will be in weatherproof enclosures, very similar to what you see on the right-hand side of the slide. There will be, not to get too nerdy as an engineer, but there will be ancillary, equipment, transformers, switchgear, and the project will use biogas to generate electricity during peak demands. So these won't run all the time. They will run during peak demands, typically on hot summer days or cold winter days. Typically between the hours of 11 and 7 is when they'll run, and they'll use the biogas that's currently being produced on site. You can go to the next slide, which shows a nice overview, Google Maps. So aside from the cartoonish looking stuff, everything is existing. So what's existing in those 2 circles, the small one is the anaerobic digester, and the larger one is a storage. And so the intent is to kind of expand with more biogas storage, with more storage of the liquid digestate that comes out of the back end of the process, which then gets land applied as a really good fertilizer. And then the 2 ICE, I know ICE is in the news a lot these days. Unfortunately, that just stands for internal combustion engine. So those are the engines that will make the electricity, and it will connect to the Hydro One infrastructure on the road. And so there's a couple new tanks. Those are the round circles, and then a couple new reciprocating engines to turn the biogas into electricity, and then a connection to the grid. You can go to the next slide. Just a bit about how we intend to operate it. So as I mentioned, it's only going to operate in peak times of demand. So the expectation would be between 500 and 1,000 hours over the course of a year. And they'll be operated based on the needs of the grid. So I mentioned that the ISO has to, keep the lights on today. There will be an interface between this project and the ISO, and the ISO will say, we need your power tomorrow, and then the engines will run when they're required. The air emissions and noise emissions will be regulated by the Ministry of Environment. So there will be air emissions control technology. There will be noise emissions, silencers to comply with the local noise levels. And then, other kind of operational safety like fire detection is included as well. Next slide. So here is the schedule for the project like this. So we are in between lines 1 and 2. The project has been registered with the ISO. That's part of the process. We need to submit by the 18th of December. The expectation is that by June, the parties are notified thumbs up or thumbs down if they're successful. And then we will move into contracting and financing. Our target is to be up and running by the end of 2028, although the program requires you to be up by 2030. But smaller projects like this typically can move more quickly, and there are incentives within the program to be up and running more quickly. You can go to the next slide. So a couple benefits we think. So projects like this will provide resiliency and reliability, having generation distributed throughout the province instead of, or I would say in addition to large local generation, provides power quality improvements. There will be we have had initial discussions with Hydro One. They will be improving some of their infrastructure locally to the project as part of the project costs, so that will provide improved reliability. These engines are more efficient than a large gas plant, and so there will be lower emissions across Ontario as a result of a megawatt here versus a megawatt elsewhere. And certainly as part of the construction and operation of the site, I mean, the site is now in operation again, which has created some jobs, and it will create more jobs during construction. So that's a benefit to the project. Next slide is just kind of contact information. That's our corporate office. And then there is a website link there for those who are interested. It gives some more details around the IESO program. And that's all I had. So I'm certainly here for questions as well.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Thank you for the presentation and all the information. Couple questions to start. Just with regards to the deadline, so that you need to submit by December 18th, because I think the intention, when I discussed this with staff, is that they'd like to do some due diligence and then come back to council with a report, but that we want to make sure we make that December 18th deadline. You can just nod that, just confirming that deadline. Okay, very good. So that's the start. I think the first item of concern as well, or just one thing to speak to is the fire suppression. I mean, being a volunteer fire service, I think that's the top of mind. I'm probably stealing some of Councillor Edgerton's thunder, but can you maybe speak to sort of some of the mitigation that's done on site with this sort of issue when you're dealing with, electricity generation and obviously biofuel? I think that's something that is not, it's obviously been being produced in the township, but it hasn't been consumed at this site specifically. So maybe speak to a bit of that, and then I'll go to council for the other questions.
Yeah, so the engines will be in containers as opposed to in a building, and the containers are they're fit for purpose. And so and part of it being fit for purpose is it's all metal construction, so that keeps the combustibility down. And then there is a fire detection system that will in the event of fire being detected, will shut off the fuel to the appliance, to the device. And then, if there was a fire inside, then the fuel would be shut off and the fire would be contained within the enclosure. So in an unlikely worst case event, it would be a fire contained to that container and it wouldn't spread beyond. But in my 20 years of doing that, I've seen it happen once. Usually the shut off of the fuel is sufficient to bring the fire down. Oh, and one more thought, the facility will be regulated, these units will be regulated by the TSSA from a safety perspective, so the safeties will be in place as well and governed by them.
Just one other question that I forgot to ask, sorry, in the initial draft. So with the application sort of horizon, I'm not familiar with how competitive, we talked about megawatts and things like that and what they're looking for. Is if they're not successful in this first sort of wave, is that sort of like you just wait for the next round of applications, or maybe talk a bit about that process? Is like how, like you mentioned, there's a number of sources that they're going to, so I'm not sure how competitive biogas is compared to wind and solar and things of that nature. So maybe speak to sort of what the expectations are maybe for the process and the application, if it's successful or if we're not successful, or what that timeline sort of, if you can speak to that, I think then we can go to council for other questions.
Yeah, great question. So this is LT2. There was an LT1, and they were looking for 900 megawatts, and they ended up getting 410 megawatts. 405 is going in one project in Napanee, a large gas plant, and the other 6 megawatts was a 5 megawatt and a 1 megawatt at biogas facility. So there was precedent for success with biogas in LT1. I do think LT2 will be more competitive, and there are a lot of things that we have going for us in this project. Larger projects typically face more opposition. They also have to build new electrical and gas transmission infrastructure that takes time. I don't know, I follow it very closely, but the world of gas turbines, large gas turbines, is going crazy. So getting equipment is hard for the bigger projects. There's a lot of stuff that's facing big projects that isn't facing us. If we're unsuccessful, I do believe, we'd have to talk about it as a team, but there are subsequent windows that we probably would pursue as well.
Questions, members of council? Deputy Mayor Huntley.
A couple questions for you, Chair. First one is, you did mention employment while there's construction, but what about the long term? Is there on-site staff? Is there technicians that are there on a regular basis? That sort of thing. And the second question to that is, what about energy storage? Is it pure produce that goes into the system, or is there a storage containment there as well?
Yeah, as far as ongoing staff, I mean, since Ryan and his team have taken over and put the system back in, I think you told me this morning there's 1 FTE and a couple others that support it. That's about right? 2 support staff. That will largely stay the same with this equipment. So I think this continues to support the viability of that operation and those jobs. There will be service people coming and going, but nothing more kind of permanent than what's there today. And then from an energy storage perspective, we hear a lot about energy storage in batteries. That won't be part of it, but here we will be storing the energy as gas, not as, so there is storage already, and we'll expand that. So this facility will be able to dispatch as if it was energy storage, but we're not storing it as electrons, we're storing it as molecules.
Seeing no, Councilor Burke?
Through the chair, to Matt, I appreciate you making yourself available before today. Couple things that I'm worried about. First off, you're trying to get this because there's biomass already there. The biogas is being stored. It's already being used. I don't know where that electricity is. It just being fed into the grid on a permanent basis?
Yes, Ryan and I were at site this morning, and so currently the biogas that is being generated is being consumed by the existing engine there, and it's being fed out onto the grid on a continuous basis. And so the thinking is twofold. One, that in events of peak, we would direct some of that gas to these new assets and dispatch, and so probably shut down that engine and direct it to these new engines. And there's more organics to be received as part of this expansion, that there would be more gas made available as well.
So through the chair, on that note, is the IESO the ones, if this all went ahead, are they going to be the ones that turn this system on, turn this system off when the demand happens? And if you aren't there using that biogas, is the plan to ramp up this digester ongoing anyways? Like, is there any other use for it?
Yeah, do you want to take that one, the second piece? I'll take the first part, and then you can take the second one. From an IESO perspective, the way it works is you are obligated to offer your capacity into the market on a day ahead basis. So today's Monday, in late afternoon Monday, you say, I have a megawatt at this price point in tomorrow's market. Overnight, the gremlins within the IESO or the decision makers there, they look at it and they say, okay, we need this much power, and oh yeah, we're going to need that 1 megawatt in Millbrook at that price. So they send us a signal and they say, yeah, we're going to need you. But then it's us, our team, a combination of folks on site and remote folks that will say, okay, we need to be running by 11 and off by 7. So ultimately the control is done by our team, but it's done as a result of an interface with the IESO on a daily basis. Then do you want to address the?
Thanks a lot to Councillor Burns' question. Currently, we're processing, so the facility is operating at about 0.1 megawatt, so 100 kilowatt. We receive material from the Peterborough area as well as some partner dairy farms. In order to ramp up to meet the amount of gas required to generate a megawatt, we would need to increase the amount of on-site storage and amount of process capacity. We would be doing that anyways to increase the production of the plant, just to make it a more feasible operation. Right now, it's a relatively small operation and financially challenging. So the original build was almost like at a demonstration level. So in order to be feasible, you have to process more material.
Great, thanks for that. Thanks for both of those answers. That's great. Another question, Councilor Burke?
Through the chair, to the point of costing, that's my biggest worry, and I discussed it with Matt. The taxpayer's on the hook through this for hydro billing, right? This idea that we're going to try to somehow complement the fact that they all want to go green with wind and solar, which is very unreliable and doesn't usually hit the mark where we need it, when we need it. And now this is another short gap, try to band-aid that problem. I'm curious, so you just have to make money, obviously. So you're getting paid a standby rate year round, whether the system turns on or not. And then theoretically on the day of use or day before, whichever, that marketing checkpoint gets made. But the taxpayer is ultimately the one that's going to subsidize this to the extent that it needs to be.
Yeah, I would say that commenting on the energy policy of the Liberals or the Progressive Conservatives is well beyond my pay grade. Energy is a tough file. There's long-term decisions being made. There's lots of different stakeholders. I think our grid from a load perspective is getting spikier, regardless of where the generation comes from. And so the grid operator who has to keep the lights on today and 30 years from now, they are obligated to, have resources at their disposal. And so, on the same token, they're trying to do that as competitively as possible, which is why this is an RFP and not a bilateral negotiation with, some provincial agency. So, there's a clear market signal that they need capacity. We think our project will be competitive, and I think the province is buying it as economically as they can, given prior policy decisions, I think is probably how I'd sum that up.
Is there a term, or like with regards to, you mentioned having to be online by 2028. So we're dealing with a lot of forecasting and a lot of sort of forward looking anticipations, et cetera. Is there, when you say you were to get online and you do have these opportunities to, whether it's bid or just be a provider of the power at those peak times, and you have your baseline of, being a vendor or something to keep the lights on, so to speak. Is there a horizon? Is there like a 10-year commitment once you're online that you'll have this opportunity to contribute this? Like what kind of horizon are you talking about from an operational standpoint? Because the worst case scenario is you invest all this money, you expand your capacity, and you get online by 2028, 2030, whatever, and then there's lots of communications about the amount of nuclear investment that's going on from a power generation standpoint. So that's sort of my question is, what does the future hold? Is there a commitment for a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year, procurement effort, or is this sort of a as we go sort of thing?
Yeah, the precursor to the ISO was the OPA, the Ontario Power Authority, which was created after Mike Harris broke up Ontario Hydro as an entity to be a creditworthy counterparty for power projects. And so for the most part, energy contracts, power contracts in Ontario have a 20-year contract. And so this one will be no different. If we are successful in June of 26 with a contract, we will be offered, or in the RFP, we will be offered a 20-year contract from the ISO.
Councilor Byrne?
Through the chair, back to Matt. Does this project, if everything went the way you would hope, once it's installed and they say, okay, now we're looking at more, does that give use the fast track to expand to more engines on site? Is that the goal, or is that the outlook that we should be looking at?
Having existing, if we had an LT2 window 1 contract, would we be ahead of the game for LT2 window 3 or 4 or 2 or whatever? No, it's a fresh competition every time. And I think beyond that, for this particular site, like any site, there are limits in terms of resource availability, fuel availability. The Hydro One only has so much capacity. I can't predict the future, but this is likely kind of it in terms of this. Once we get this up and running, I don't see continued expansion just from the permits that are already in place on site, the Hydro One infrastructure. I don't see continued expansion of this facility.
Okay. Good discussion. Thanks for all those answers, both Matt and Ryan. Right now, I think with regards to the timeline, we want to make sure that staff come back prior to that December 18th threshold. I think what we'll probably do is just ask staff to report back in December. We'll shoot for that December 1st, which is our next council meeting date, if possible, and if not, it'll be the 15th. So we'll give you a ton of time, but we'll just want to make sure that staff has the ability to do the due diligence that we're looking for. So the recommendation would be that we receive the presentation from Matt and Ryan with regards to Synergy Power Systems regarding the municipal support confirmation for Synergy Power Systems for IESO's LT2 RFP for information, and the staff review and report back to council in December. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councilor Byrne. All in favor? That is approved. Thanks everyone for attending, and thanks for the delegation and all the information. We'll look forward to further conversation. Next item on the agenda is the minutes of the regular council meeting held November 3rd, 2025. Be as approved as presented. Moved by Councilor Byrne, seconded by Councilor Nashoff. All in favor? That is approved. Next, we have reports. Report 9.1, road occupancy permits, Ms. Aya.
Thank you, Mayor. The report before council is ECD 2025-10, road occupancy permits for Santa Claus Parade. Council has seen an iteration of this report several times this year. The recommendations are that council authorize staff to amend the road occupancy permit to accommodate an altered route for this Santa Claus Parade, which takes place December 13th of this year. And the second recommendation is that the Township of Cabamonagan provide a certificate of insurance to the County of Peterborough for the above noted road occupancy.
Thanks, Bridget. So pretty informal. We'll look forward to the Santa Claus Parade on December 13th. The recommendations is authorize staff to amend the road occupancy permit to accommodate that alternate route, and that we provide the certificate insurance to the Peterborough County. Can I get a mover and a second for that? Moved by Councillor Edgerton, seconded by Councillor Natchez. All in favor? That is approved. Next is the CAO capital status. Ms. Hurley is not here today, but she is back. If anyone has any questions with the CAO capital status, I can take those away and try to get back to you before the next council meeting. Okay, good enough. So we'll just receive the CAO report and capital status for information then. Moved by Councillor Natchez, seconded by Councillor Edgerton. All in favor? That is approved. There is no general business. There is no correspondence for information. There is no correspondence for action. There are no bylaws for review. Wow, I'm really getting off easy today. I know that means something else is coming. There is no unfinished business. There is no notices of motion, and the confirming bylaw, that bylaw number 2025-52 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings. Oh, excuse me, I did skip that. Did I miss it? I did. Council committee verbal reports. Anyone have a committee update? Do Deputy Mayor, and then we'll go to Councilor Brown.
Through you, Chair, just a verbal update that I can successfully report that former Mayor Scott McFadden is now married.
And congratulations to him on that wonderful accomplishment. Councilor Byrne.
Through the chair, I'd just like to thank the turnout at the Remembrance Day celebration on Tuesday down in Millbrook. And I'd like to thank whoever for alternating the traffic flow so it didn't turn at the corner by the post office. It was diverted back behind the old arena, which is useful for that purpose. And it made the ceremony at the cenotaph a whole lot more quiet and peaceful, the way it should be. So just want to kudos for that.
Yeah, the cenotaph it was great to see the attendance, but we have a great track record of great attendance at the cenotaph ceremony every year. It's great to see it. We got a lot of positive comments with regards to the new crosswalk, which was great. And I know from those of us who attended the Remembrance Day dinner, which we want to thank the Legion for the invitation every year, and recognizing all those up to 60 years of service that the Legion was celebrated on Saturday night, which is it's a huge accomplishment and a great service to the community. So thank the Legion for the invitation and for a great ceremony again for Remembrance Day this year. Can I get a motion to receive those council committee verbal updates? Moved by Councillor Edgerton, seconded by Deputy Mayor Hunley. All in favor? That is approved. Now going back, I'll go back to the bylaw. Being bylaw number 2025-52, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the meeting held November 17th, 2025. Be read a first, second, third time and passed this 17th day of November, signed by the mayor and the clerk and the corporate seal attached thereto. Can I get a mover? Moved by Councillor Edgerton, seconded by Councillor Byrne. All in favor? That is approved. Lastly, a motion to adjourn today's meeting. Moved by Deputy Mayor Huntley, seconded by Councillor Natchez. All in favor? That is approved. The number of upcoming events and meetings, I'll read them aloud. Cabamonagan Public Library Board meeting meets tomorrow night at 7 p.m. at the Millbrook Branch. Millbrook Valley Trails Advisory meeting is Monday, November 24th at 4 p.m. Our next regular council meeting, as alluded to, is December 1st at 1 p.m. We have a special budget meeting on Thursday, December 11th, starting at 9 a.m. in the council chambers. And as we also mentioned previously, the Santa Claus Parade is December 13th at 1 p.m. We'll look forward to seeing everybody there. And our subsequent regular council meeting, the last one in 2025, is December 15th, 2025 at 1 p.m. in the council chambers. Thanks very much for everyone. And again, we'll look forward to remembering the service of Mr. Cathcart as we move forward today. So thank you for everything.